How you doing tonight? The operator reading something. There's new faces. Sorry. He's got a bus over here.
Good evening. Good evening. Just past 6 o'clock, so probably a great time to get started. Big crowd.
I got you here. You cut the umbilical cord with a sawmill?
I did. Just about an hour and a half ago.
This is my neighbor Mike.
Hello.
Hey Mike.
And Mike, you were a member before, correct?
About
You-
35 years
All right. And then the treasurer's report, which is probably important for this meeting.
It's virtually the same as last 2 months ago. We haven't had any income, so we got,
Your phone's local data is turned off, so I can't help you with that at the moment.
there'll probably be some expenses related to the picnic we just had. We're still working on technology purchases, but we're fine. No money last month, no money this month so far, so.
And when, after the meeting, we'll put out the total and all that. So, old business would be, we just had our picnic. Thank you for everybody who joined us there. I know summer is a busy time. Most clubs just shut down for the summer, so any participation we have at all is great. I do appreciate it. I know it was a great day outside. A lot of people had yard projects and vacations going on. But everybody that was there, I know everybody had a good time and a lot of fellowship there. Any other old business that anybody can think of, since it was just no meeting last month? I don't think there's anything else. So the new business would be what I put out in my email, which is the creation of a workshop, or the potential creation of a workshop. We'll get right into that, and we put together a PowerPoint with, keep me on track and on topic.
Dustin? Would
Oh,
you answer
yes.
my question?
Yes.
Or anyway, I had a lady call.
I wrote it down too.
She has a white oak stump that's pretty big, and she had a chainsaw artist come and turned it into an eagle. She wants to know what to put on it to help preserve it. Does anyone suggest anything?
Linseed oil.
Outdoors,
How about Thompson's water seal? That's what I use on my outdoor stuff, benches and all.
okay. Thompson water seal.
Yeah.
Penofil.
Penofil,
Penofil.
okay, two things.
And need to wipe it down once a year after that.
Thank you.
Lasts forever. Can you spray it on or wait? See what it means?
Sprayer one.
Write it down.
So it's gonna be workshop presentation.
How do you spell that again?
PENOFIL.
Where you find it? Internet?
Did I put all my stuff in your way there?
No, that's not it.
Yeah.
Hey Terry, can you open this right here? Workshop presentation.
They will all have that. You're welcome.
No more world travel?
That's been cut down quite a bit.
What you gotta do is.
They don't like my age.
Alt tab to go over here, sorry. You go to here to mess with stuff. And we'll bring this up now under change slide, and then if you gotta mess with your display again, which is alt tab, just tap in.
Can we hit the light?
Bring it back on.
I don't want to turn off too much, we'll put everybody to sleep.
Yeah.
Okay, so, this was on somebody's hat. We had a guest at the picnic who used to be a member quite a long time ago. And he had a hat with this was on there, so I got a picture of it because we don't have a logo on anything anymore. So, but, go ahead, next slide, please. All right, so this workshop proposal. This workshop proposal started out at a conversation that Bob Steinwell had at Mark Adams School. And that conversation was about a woodworking club in Portland that had almost, at the time, 800 members, and we talked to them a couple days ago, and they've got over 1,000 members now. And that growth, of course, Portland is a much bigger area, but that growth was driven by having a workshop, having that availability having that workshop available to the members. That got us over to Champagne's workshop. They've got I know a lot of people have heard about the Dream Shop they had over there at one time that got shut down. That was all absorbed into the Champagne Woodworkers Club, and they've got a building. We didn't get a number. What did you guys say, about 20,000 square feet? It's a lot of walking in their shop, but and they basically have 2 or 3 of everything in this shop. And their growth, they just opened up August of last year, and when we were there, they were up to around 40-something members from just a few. So they're not advertising. Their growth is complete word of mouth there.
Hey, Dustin, I think if I could shed some light on the Portland Club, they told us they originally started around 2012, they had maybe 200 members. And after they finally found a location, they added a workshop. 10 years later now, they have like 1,100 members right now. A big part, the big component is actually having that workshop.
And as we go into this, there are different ways of putting this concept together, and part of having those numbers is how they structured the workshop side of it, how they structured their membership. It allows a lot of these members to join and not really be that committed to that side of it. We looked at other clubs across the country, just Google searching. Most of your workshops that are part of woodworking clubs are in retirement communities, so there's a lot of information when it comes to those. I found a couple more, and then when we talked to Chip with the Portland Woodworking Club, he gave us a couple more to look out to that they actually went to. They flew out and visited a couple shops where they ever started theirs. One of them was Kansas City, and the other one was Greenville, South Carolina. Greenville, South Carolina. They actually flew from Portland out to these places to check those out before they got started. and use different places, trying not to reinvent the wheel there. So when we went to Champaign, I put a few of the pictures in here that we took while we were at Champaign. When you walk into their facility, and their facility is open 24/7 the way they have theirs set up. And you got a key card to get in, they get in. And this is the foyer when you walk in, they've got a library, a desk, a table, some chairs. And then the next door there, you see there, goes into the shop. And like I said, it is a massive shop. And you have a key card to get into that side as well. This is 1/4 of their shop, maybe 1/5, somewhere in there. And there's another saw stop on the other side of this one, plus another one in another part of it. They have all the router tables there. And the way they've structured their club is a 2-tiered system. You have members who have access, or it's 3 tiers. You have members who they don't need the workshop. They have their own workshop. So they're just regular club members. They come to meetings, they come to other events, but they don't use these tools. And that's just an annual small fee like we have now. And then they have the other 2 tiers are using the tools. One of them is they just use the tools, and the higher tier is they get one of these workbenches. And I don't remember how many workbenches they had around the shop. It was, I want to say 20 or 21 different workbenches about the size of these tables, and that was your space. You didn't have to clean up after yourself, keep it as messy as you want. That you're renting that space 24/7, and that was their higher tier membership and how they had it.
And then they had another tier for your kids and stuff.
Yeah, like an add-on
Yeah.
for those family members that are. So if you have a spouse or an adult child who's coming in to help you, there was an add-on for that as well. So they kind of had, every one of these places has a different structure, and for us, we'd have to figure out what's going to work best for us. Slide. Just another picture of what they've got going on. This place had dust collection everywhere, air filtration everywhere. All these dust collectors are all set up to come on automatically as soon as you open the blast gates. Go to the next slide. This is their sanding area. And then just on the other side, I think I included a picture, they have a bunch of lathes, and on the other side of that, they have a finishing area. The next slide. And then this going back even further, here you can see 2 different CNC machines, one's here, another one behind it. They've got everything you can think of in this facility. And on the other side of here is a little room where they have a laser cutter. So then they have another meeting room, like that entryway, that has a couch, a refrigerator, shower, bathroom, or did they say 7 bathrooms in the place? 6 bathrooms?
Something like this.
Yeah. This is they're definitely fortunate for what they have with that one. Then anyway, that was from our tour. We went up there, and we were there for probably over an hour, just a guided tour from one to the other, and talked to them about how they set everything up, kind of their experience going through that. And that's the same thing with our conversation on the phone with Chip the other day. It was just learning how they went about setting their shops up. So,
You say how many square feet was this?
we're guessing about 20,000 square feet. It is.
Massive.
Yeah. So I want to start out with a few of the things that will probably draw some questions here, and what we have found out and what we have to still find out. So insurance, will be the number one thing. We have to be insured. We have to protect ourselves. We have to protect our assets and so forth. What we found out talking to other clubs is that insurance really isn't that hard to do when you are a nonprofit. The main thing is that your board members have to be covered for personal liability, because if anything happens, it's the board members who take on that risk, and then the rest of the insurance goes towards facility and tools. we've had some conversations with Greg about insurance and kind of some insights from him on that as well. Tools, that's another big question. Where are we gonna get tools? Where are we gonna outfit this place? So this can happen in several different ways to start out with. First of all, I have almost a full workshop, and right now I'm not doing a whole lot. So any gaps that need to be filled in, I will loan what I have to the club for this project until it can be replaced by the club in one way or another. If I'm not using it, so I have a saw stop, 36-inch drop sander, 18-inch planer, drill press, all that stuff. So if we have any holes when we get ready to open, I'll fill them with my own stuff until the club can replace those, acquire those tools in one way or another. And that's something we have to find out. How do we want to do that to start out with? If we want to offer to buy tools from members who decide, hey, I don't want this anymore, or exchange the value of the tool for membership dues into the workshop. There are a lot of different options there. There are different things that we can discuss putting in place. But like I said, I will loan mine to get it going, so that is not a hurdle that we have to overcome immediately. And then ideally, over time, the revenue that we bring in from the dues on the woodworking or the wood shop portion of this would go to replace these tools with top of the line brand new tools. That as our economy gets better, maybe we can look at sponsorships or discounts from some of these companies to help that process along. There's a lot of what ifs later down the road to put that together, but in the short term, we kind of have a plan in place there. The space. Greg, I'm glad you're here tonight. So when I was approached about this, the space to start this was the one thing, the roadblock in my mind. That's a great idea, but real estate is not cheap. And getting into somewhere, somebody's garage at home is not appropriate for this because of the risk involved, because you've got a club coming in together. It really needed to be a commercial space in order to do this. And so the only thing I had really to say about it is, well, let's present this to the club, see what they think, and maybe somebody will raise their hand and say, hey, I can help you out with that. And before we ever got to today, Greg has done that. Greg Harwood here, if he doesn't know, he owns Sangamon Reclaim. If you haven't been there, please go there. He's got a large selection of slabs and different projects that his crew has created there, and then they do the custom work as well there as well. So anyway, Greg has offered to help out with this, and of course with space on the short term. And the details of that would have to be negotiated with our landlord, of course, but that is that roadblock of the real estate part, the home where we would start this. He is taking that roadblock away, which makes this a viable.
Is it at their location and how much space?
It is at that location. As far as how much space, that's to be determined. Like I said, that's kind of a sit down to there's a negotiation with Greg on, and not as a member, but as a business owner, and to talk and figure that out. So
I got a facility of 5,500 square feet. Interested in that?
we definitely talk after this. So
Yes.
There's a possibility of a number of places. I mean, I think the good place would have been the old James Machinery. I don't know what it finally went for, but when I looked at it the last day of the auction, it was at $80,000. That would have been an ideal building for, as far as I'm concerned, to start with. There are some buildings like that along MacArthur Boulevard, and I'm sure there are in other areas of town.
And I'm right there, and I've mentioned that as well, that there are constantly, it doesn't even matter what the economy is like, there are constantly buildings like that are coming up all around Springfield and the immediate surrounding areas. But we would have to build up from where we're at now and have enough, either enough in the bank or enough on paper as far as history goes for a a bank to help us out in that. We just aren't to that point yet. I agree, James Machinery would have been a great place for several different reasons. But we're not in a position to jump into something like that at this point with what we have in the bank, which plus cameras on, we'll go over that as well. Another thing we have to figure out is the price structure for membership into that. You know, when it comes to having a wood shop, there are a lot of members who don't need that part of the club. We have our own workshop at home that we do everything in, and we don't have a reason to go into another workshop and drive there every time we want. So it doesn't make sense for all members to pay to be a part of that, to use that facility. So we have to come up with a price structure. Your members that are coming to every meeting that are part of the club, you've got members that want to use that facility and so forth. And we've seen several different examples of price structures from different clubs. That's something that we've got to come up with.
What are some of those examples?
So the Champagne one, they went up this year, I was just looking there, $125 a month for people who use the facility, which I feel is reasonable. You set up a shop, you're spending thousands, if not tens of thousands, depending on how fancy you go, on those. And then they add, it's about $36 a month to add a spouse onto there that can come in with you. And then they have their regular membership, which was rock bottom. I want to say it was $15 a year for just a regular club member that comes to the meetings and the different seminars that they put on and so forth. They had that was for the regular membership. For the premium one, where you get the workbench, that was $200 a month. And at the time, every single workbench was full. They didn't have, they were building, weren't they? They were building another workbench in the back for another person.
Yeah.
So they had no problem filling all the top tier memberships there. And then all they had left were just regular members.
Did they sell wood there?
They did not sell wood. Oh, I didn't mention they had plenty of storage space. So as a top tier member, you've got a whole corner to yourself for storage. And then as a regular member, you had, there was basically a short-term project shelf where you could put stuff until you come back to it a few days later.
But they did have a section where you could put your cutoffs and the wood that you weren't using. That was open to all the members.
Yeah, and they had quite a bit there. It was they had the cutoff, basically their strap in open to anybody that wanted any of that stuff. The Portland membership fee structure, of course, they have a very large membership, so they are only $600 a year, or $400 for 6 months, or $10 an hour for every hour you want to use the shop. So they had 3 different tiers for using the shop, and then their regular membership was $75 a year for regular members, where ours is where we had $30 a year. And then they had, if you were a professional woodworker, it costs a little bit more, but on the website, all your information was put on the website and they advertised for you as part of that. And there's about a dozen different tiers of regular members, depending on regular member plus family. They've got it pretty complicated as far as different ones.
Portland has at least 300 people who are doing the workshop. So their costs are gonna go down because you have more people doing it. Champagne, they're locked into 28 people. They don't wanna go above that. So that's why that's $100 a month. So obviously the more members we have doing this, then obviously that'll have a good impact on the cost per month.
I don't get how the finances of that work go. If it's 20,000 square feet, someone's gotta be subsidizing the rental of that commercial space.
And they are.
They are. So they got a benefactor who owns that space. In fact, their benefactor owns all the equipment in that building. And the woodworking club leases that for a very low amount every month, basically to pay the insurance or pay the taxes and light bill on the place.
Yeah.
So yes, you're correct. They do have they are being subsidized in that way, which is why they can do what they're doing with that space. For us, the big thing is getting into a space at low cost until we can build up where we need to be able to pay for a facility ourselves. And it did sound like they didn't want to go any larger there. They weren't advertising, they weren't telling anybody about it. But it sounded like if you wanted to join, you could, but it wasn't something they were pushing for. They were pretty comfortable with where they were at.
They didn't tell us directly, but I gathered some numbers along the way, and I'm estimating it was costing them at least $60,000 a year just to cover the cost of that building.
And yeah, after and they also subleased that building too. They subleased out to other clubs and organizations that paid them monthly to come in and use the space. Not to use the tools, but just to use the space. Like they're a wood turning club, paid them, subleased the space to come in and do their meetings because they'd be able to actually use a lathe there, whereas going to the local library they couldn't.
Are there in-house supervisors or teachers or somebody that's maintaining the equipment? Are you paying somebody to be there all the time?
So it depends on the club. So with the Champagne Club, it's not. All members go through a safety class, and then afterwards they've got a key card that gets them into the building, and that key card actually turns on every machine. So they go up to the table saw, they swipe it, the computer says that John Doe turned the table saw on at this time and then turned it off at this time. They use that data for maintenance on the tools, for how much the tools have been used. And then they have a volunteer service hours. So they require so many, their club requires so many volunteer hours from every member. And one guy, that's what he does for his volunteer hours. He comes in for an hour a month or whatever it is and maintains the machinery. Another one comes in one day a month or a couple days a month and sweeps the floor and so forth. So they have no paid positions there. There's a lot of volunteer going on there. And the Portland Club was the same way as far as volunteers go, only they had to have a shop supervisor. So they had volunteer shop supervisors that were there whenever the doors were open to make sure everything was okay. So there's different ways to do it, and honestly, whatever, when it comes to insurance, whatever they say we have to do is gonna be our minimum. If insurance says you have to have somebody there, well, that's a hurdle we're gonna have to figure out. If they say you can do it without it because of this or that, there are a lot of questions that still have to be answered. And that's why we're going over here, to kind of put this idea out there, because our next step is answering these questions. Tonight isn't to, like I said in the email, tonight isn't to vote on doing this. Tonight is a vote to move forward. So for those of us, anybody here interested in helping put this together, we're not kind of spinning our wheels. We know that there is that demand, that members want to see this happen before we go any further. So the bylaws, so we started working on bylaws, and then Bob mentioned this to me, and immediately in my head, let's see what everybody says, because if I continue to work on this project here, it's going to completely change, because our bylaws will need to have all this written into it, and that's something that's going to happen. And also for incorporating this into a nonprofit, we're going to have our bylaws all put together and correct. That includes not only our bylaws, but our appendices to that, which are going to be our safety regulations that we put together, our shop regulations and so forth are all going to be appendices to those bylaws. So we've got to come up with something to at least start out with to get us going. The next would be nonprofit. And we've talked about this before. We're not set up as a nonprofit here. We just don't make any money. One of the things to get the insurance to work is we need to be a nonprofit, either a 501c7, which is a private club, or a 501c3, which includes many different entities, including entities that are based around education, which we are. Every meeting we come to, we have somebody coming up here educating us on how to do something. So there are benefits to both, depending on which way we want to go with that. I am for I'm in the 501c3 camp, only because it immediately allows us to some discounts in different places. Our website becomes free instead of paying for it through a third party and so forth. There's there's a lot of immediate benefits, and then down the road, after we've established ourselves, there are different grants out there that if we have a member who is capable of grant writing, we could potentially apply for that money to help pay for not just equipment, but as we grow larger and we have a bigger footprint in the community, doing things like reaching out to schools and maybe putting on different community events, that those can be funded through grants. That can't happen if we're a 501c7. So that's something else we have to, even if we don't do this, we've got to get that figured out eventually. It's definitely important here because we're not going to get the insurance until we get that part sorted out.
What form of entity was Champaign in
So,
Oregon?
so Champaign, they're a 501c7, and then Oregon's a 501c3. And Oregon, they are heavy in education. They are having workshops or basically workshops, 2, 3, 4 times a week during the school year, because they said during the summer they pretty much, in Portland, during the few months of summer, nobody's in Portland because that's the only time you can go do anything there. But during the school year, they're giving 2 to 3 safety seminars a week for new members coming in, plus all the other ones they do, how to use a table saw and how to do, you name it, they teach it out there. And they have volunteers that teach, but they also reimburse people. So if you're experienced and you want them to teach at theirs, you can say, yeah, I want to be reimbursed, and they reimburse you for your time when you're teaching. So there are a lot of examples of different ways of going about doing this. I kind of touched on safety, but and I know that's last on there, but of course that's the most important part of this. Safety all across the board. We definitely have to figure out when it comes to that appendices in our bylaws, the safety one is going to be the most important. Now that's going to be dictated by insurance. Insurance is going to say this is the minimum you have to do when it comes to safety, and then we have to look at it on that. You know, if we started right now, we have a lot of people here who know how to not hurt themselves in the workshop. But as we start to grow and we have more people that come in the door, there are going to be people who want to be a part of this, people who went to one of Greg's classes that he puts on and says, I want to try that, but I don't want to spend several $1,000s on equipment. I want to go over here and use their stuff. They don't have as much experience. So we have to think about that when we write these safety policies. And even though the insurance may say this is what you need, we need to look at what is practical and what we need to have on there. And then of course all this stuff, even after we get started, has to be a living document per se. We have to continuously look at this and say, hey, this incident happened, we need to address it this way, or here's a potential problem, let's address that. So of course, getting all this done to start out with is not the end of it. There'll be a lot going on there.
Okay, a question from the internet. It seems that this venture may be cost prohibitive for a club our size. Would it be more suitable to start out and try to establish a partnership with a local entity like Springfield Reclaimed?
And that's kind of what we're doing here. That's why we got this far, is because Greg has come out and said, hey, if you need space, we have space here that's available to get this off the ground and get going. So yeah, that's kind of what we've done here. We've partnered or will partner with. At least that was the plan. And we have other member Bob here as well. Just mentioned something, but it's those partnerships that are going to will make this potentially happen. Without them, it wouldn't. So yeah, it is cost prohibitive.
We had looked into it also because we had a number of requests of people coming, woodworkers, and we have a lot of large equipment that just makes the process simpler for the flattening machine and the big planers and all that anyway. So it could really shorten their time down a lot. And so we did a lot of look into creating this type of a program also. Because we're for profit, our big hang up is insurance. And so I need to partner up with a group like Capital Area Woodworkers, who's not for profit, so y'all would carry the insurance, we kinda act as a landlord, but it's one of those working together partnership. I mean, everybody wanting to make this work is how it's gonna end up happening. The one guy over in Champaign, I think, is very fortuitous. That started out as a dream club funded by the U of I, and a lot of money went into that program, and then it just sort of went by the wayside. This guy picked it up, kind of pennies on a dollar, was able to turn it into something good for the club. And that'll happen here too in Springfield over time. But they were just fortuitous. I mean, it's a brand new building, it's all new equipment, I mean, it was, so U of I sanctioned state of the art stuff, but anyway. But yeah, there's things, we need the club, for us to do it, we need the club in order to make the insurance part work. So,
Thank you.
Looking to see if you reminded me about questions, just looking to see if we had any other questions.
Not any questions, but I see where it would be really great for somebody that maybe doesn't have the bigger, more expensive equipment to be able to go over and flatten a slab and maybe, or plane something that's really quite wide. I'm sure you have some, at least 24-inch planes and things like that. So, and then also like on a meeting night, here, we can't fire up a router or a table saw or show a technique on how to make something. It'd be like an open shop just about every meeting night.
Exactly.
Because you could have people watching the machinery working, and demonstrating. So that would be nice.
And you're right on the money with that. That's, if we go to the next slide. So, that's on here. So some of the things to think about when it comes to this. Our own space for meetings. We're not here. We have a place with everything. We're not dragging computer equipment there. We're not setting up. Everything would be there. It doesn't rely on myself or Terry being there just to make sure that, that technology works, or one other person, and so forth. And like you're saying, Ralph, every single meeting becomes an open shop. It is, you have somebody who wants to demonstrate something on a table saw, we have that camera there, we can point towards the blade, put it up on a big TV so everybody can see it, and they can demonstrate what's going on instead of coming in here with a thumb drive full of pictures and some jigs to say, hey, this is what I did at home. Well, now they can, if they want, they can demonstrate what they did, the technique, and really, and show those things. We're not just doing an open shop 2 or 3 times a year and having somebody coming in once a year from somewhere to show us something. We have our own members every month showing those hands-on things.
Okay, then he said maybe partner with UIS or Lincoln Land Community College. I could see, especially if we became the 501c3, that we would be doing that.
Yeah, if we had that 501c3, that's something we could reach out to partner with other education entities. I don't know how that would work or what programs they have at these different places that would mesh with that. The only one I'm aware of is Capital Area Career Center. They have that woodworking side, and I think most places have gotten away from that. I know Greg's working with one of the schools when it comes to that, with Lanford on that. So there are a lot of partnerships, opportunities down the road, and other ones that have to do with, I know I got a phone call from the hospital, and they take these kids that are stuck there all the time, and they do a week-long craft type thing, and they said, hey, when it comes time, can we reach out and talk to you about having a couple people come in and help with do something with woodworking. And she called me the other day about this. So that there are a lot of other opportunities to partner with, and those things come with either a television camera or a reporter's camera, and that publicity to help grow the club as well. So that's something else to think about. So yeah, every meeting becomes an open shop. This also, as Bob has mentioned before, meets what we consider an unmet need in the community. This doesn't exist anywhere in Springfield. We're not stepping on anybody else's toes or trying to reinvent something that's just down the road. This just isn't here. Not having this type of facility here means that there's a lot of, especially younger people who might want to get into this hobby that aren't going to, because it is a cost prohibitive hobby to get into once you get to a certain level. Now, you can go buy a drill and a jigsaw and make some yard decorations. And when I was in base housing, I built an entire entertainment center with a hand drill and a circular saw and using guides and you can do it, but you got to be pretty dedicated to do something like that with just a few hand tools. So there is this unmet need in the community, and this would meet that. It's like I just said, opens up a door to a new generation of woodworkers. Greg has the extruder board classes he does every month, and we can hold different events like that introduce people to this craft. And having a facility like this where somebody can pay a little bit of money every month to use this equipment helps get them in the door, and they can come in for a while and they can either say, oh, I don't like this, or they can say, you know what, I like this, and we end up with a lifelong member that way. Whereas without this facility, that never happens. You never introduce them to this. It is our kids and our grandkids and our nieces and nephews that get introduced to this in our workshops, but not the community as a whole. Other clubs, yeah, the drastic. Yep.
Next generation, as you look around this room, can you point out anybody here that's under 40 years of age?
I am.
Me?
You hit, you know how old I am?
We need.
I'm 40, so yeah, no, there's nobody under 40 in here. By one.
Well, you don't look like you're under 40.
Darn few between 40 and 50. We're a bunch of old geezers. Most of what I initially learned, I learned as a high school freshman. Now the state doesn't allow high schools to have industrial arts, let alone a specific woodworking class. This would be a great opportunity for us to offer classes to high school kids during the summer.
Yeah, you're right. There is a lot of potential here to open up the door for different classes to introduce new people to this hobby. It is, you make that point here in Sangamon County. The main exposure outside of the home, outside of somebody having a relative that does this, is Capital Area Career Center, and their woodworking isn't like it was when I was in high school, or when you guys were in high school, where it's here's a shop and we're going to build a piece of furniture. Their woodworking is we're going to build a house. They've got an indoor facility that they build a 2-story house from scratch. They do everything, and then when they're done, they take it apart from the ground, from top to bottom. So it's not woodworking; it's carpentry. It's construction. That is they learn a little bit about every single trade of electrical, plumbing, and all that, which is a great program, but it is not woodworking. This is completely. My dad was a millwright and a carpenter. I grew up building garages and everything on the weekends was for making extra money, and I'd be up there putting a roof on. I did not enjoy that whatsoever, but I do enjoy this hobby. It's completely different. So, as Bob has said, other clubs have seen a drastic increase in membership. I know the few of us that have talked to people outside the club that have said, "Hey, yeah, I'd be interested in that." And I can see that happening here. We are Springfield. We're not Portland. There are neighborhoods in Portland that are the size of Springfield. So, but we will see, I do believe, a big increase in membership because of this side of the house, which is going to increase our revenue, which will allow for equipment purchases, building purchase down the road to more develop this concept, to make this a really great.
Are there any other clubs here in the Midwest, Quad Cities, Chicago area, Indianapolis? Are there any other clubs that we could check out
One in Kansas City.
You mentioned Kansas City and Portland with there. Have you knowledge of any others?
Did it have a workshop, is that what you're asking?
That they're doing this, yeah.
Well, Mark Adams School has rules for every piece of equipment as to how to use it, how not to use it. They have a lot of experience in safety, and so there are probably ways to gather a lot of that information.
And I agree, this is gonna be a lot of, you know, basically plagiarism, looking at what everybody else has got going on and not reinventing that wheel, pulling together what we can find and using what's going to work best for us. And you bring up a great point. Mark Adams has the safety, you know, a disc they send, watch this before you ever show up. You know, they are right there on safety. And Champaign for Safety, they have a third-party vendor that provides all their safety online. So it's an online e-learning course about safety, and that, I guess, separates them from that safety, the initial safety side for insurance purposes. So there are a lot of different ways of going about it, but I don't know of any other clubs here in the Midwest that we could go to easily. I've got a whole list of there's that document I shared with you, Bob, had, I don't know, maybe half a dozen or more clubs, but they're all over the place, and most of those are retirement community clubs, which they have great documentation online. They have a lot of their safety policies, procedures, and so forth that we can get that information from. So it's just kind of pooling all of that together and looking at what's going to work best for us. And again, that's all going to be a living document. Here's what we've got and what we think is going to be the best. That's to start out with. As soon as the doors open, we might find out the next day, oh, we messed up on that, we got to change this. You know, humans are the human nature thing. You can think that everybody's going to do this, but they do that, and then you got to change something up. So all we can do is the best. We can just do the best we think we can put down on paper to start out with.
Okay, 3728 also said, are there state or federal grants available to expand our abilities to or outreach to the community?
There are, when it comes to grant money, there's grant money for everything out there, available at different times in different amounts. As we are now, we're not getting any of that. We are a club that doesn't make enough money to do a tax return. That's all we are at this point. And also, when we do set up, a lot of that, you have to show an established history. So it's going to be down the road as we develop that history as a 501c3, and that is what whoever is writing that grant for us, that grant request, is going to use to try to get those funds.
The groundwork and the organization, the setup, and doing all of the details to get it started is going to take a fair number of people. Have you identified those within the club, and have you identified how many members of the club might be interested in using the facility as a workshop?
That's why we're here tonight. So that's the purpose of this meeting and both of those. So.
Well, and I think those of us that talked about it were interested, some more than others, because some of us have our own shops and stuff. But if the club doesn't want to go forward, why spend all that extra time digging into it until we had more of a concrete answer from the club?
John Little said, I think that this will be a huge positive for the club in terms of drawing in new members. JH said, is a GoFund a good idea?
GoFundMe is an idea, and I didn't think of that. That is something that you can put out there, and anybody who would want to contribute to this. Although when it comes to the financial side of things, depending on with what we have and what we need, we really need to figure out what we need to spend for that first year, what we could potentially have. We've got to we have to create a business plan before we even look at trying to get money from anybody else for any other entity. We don't know what we need, how much we need, where we need to put those expenses. That is the next step in this, is figuring out basically a business plan and bringing that to membership and saying, this is the business plan, this is what we're looking at, and then vote on that business plan to move forward.
Yeah, a couple of excuse me, a couple of observations that just know. Number one, I haven't heard anything that you've said that would make it impossible to be a 501c3. And I happen to think that this is really a good idea personally, and I'm on your side for the 501c3. That's not a big deal to do. It would not take much to do it. Number two, you don't have a big problem with bylaws because your bylaws will merely have a statement that you are doing this kind of eleemosynary or charitable activity in addition to the other stuff that's in bylaws. The detailed stuff you're talking about becomes part of the operations manual, and you develop that as you're going along. I don't know why the Capital Area Vocation Center stopped doing the woodworking. I'm guessing it is because they wanted to become more industrial based. I do know, and I remember when they were doing that, I do know that they started to get problems with having venues to actually do the work. They were using high school places, and high schools had too much other stuff. It's very difficult to get anything in high schools today because they're all overburdened with everything else. I don't think that the need for having space, venues to do woodworking has decreased, personally. I may be wrong, but I think if you had venues to do that and you advertise that we can have 10 people doing woodworking and you have the setup, that you would get 10 people to come on in and do it. I don't think that has decreased at all.
I definitely agree with you.
And I think that if we really want to go forward with this, we've got enough brain power in this room to work out a financial plan.
I definitely agree, yes. And that's why I'm pitching this to everybody here. And you brought
That's my statement, and I'll stick to it.
So you brought up something that reminded me, something Chip said that I mentioned. Their club, before they built one, they did a workshop. So every meeting they were having in high school facilities. They were renting high school wood shops for their meeting nights, for their woodworking clubs, so they could have hands-on every single meeting. But then those facilities kept shutting down around Portland, and it got to the point where they just couldn't find one. And that's what brought them to develop their own facilities, is that they were already used to having that hands-on for every meeting, and they no longer had a spot. So, but what you said reminded me of that.
Well, it's also hard to get, what do we call them, industrial arts people to teach that stuff.
Oh, yes, yes.
They're all dropped out of it.
Yeah, there's
But I bet the demand hasn't decreased, at least enough of demand at the level we're talking.
well, especially today with the internet and YouTube. Somebody will see something on Pinterest and say, I want to make that, and then they go to YouTube to figure it out, and then they say, oh, I gotta have that, and that's gonna cost me $1,000 just to get started, and that's the end of it. But there is enough, I think, drive because of, I think the internet has a lot to do that nowadays. This decline, and now all of this push to make your own stuff, to make something. I don't think demand has decreased at all at this point.
Okay, Eric Wyatt, he said, I think we should move to the next step. The 3728 said, it sounds like a committee should be established to delve further into all the particulars of this potential venture and to investigate all of the possibilities. That's kind of what the leadership crew's been doing.
Yeah, and that's why we're here tonight, to get to that. So the last thing on here, real quick, is the larger membership means top speakers for the club. If we have the larger our membership, the easier it is for us to get other masters in woodworking to our club to give these workshops. Plus, the increased funds means we can pay these guys too. So a lot of the Mark Adams instructors and so forth, getting them here to us, because there is a lot of us that can't get there to them. That having a larger membership is going to help that as well. So basically, this is just a lot of different benefits to having this. And I'll sum it up as, the last part is, who is going to use this facility? Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. Eric talked about who would use it, said I would use this shop because the tools, because there are tools that I do not have in my own shop that I would be available to in this shop. And 3728 said, even though I have a shop, I would like to be able to work with others to expand my capabilities.
So there's a couple of things there, folks that don't have any interest in acquiring the bigger tools, having those there. Also, if somebody is in a position where they want to downsize, they've been in woodwork, having their own shop for a while, and they're done with that, they want to downsize, but they still want access to a shop. You have that demographic here as well. New people getting into woodworking,
I was just gonna say, I've been in the club for 30 years. I've got a lot of really good tools, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm missing. I'm interested in downsizing. This would be something that would work for me. I could save a lot of space, get rid of some of my tools, possibly be used in this venture, whatever, but, I think I would I'm gonna have to drive from my house to this place to use it. But the woodworking that I do these last several years, I can do that. And I can save a lot of space in a shop that I don't really have. I have a garage, so.
That brings up another point. You have a lot of woodworkers who have to move the wife's car out of the garage, husband's car out of the garage,
Right.
and set up a whole shop just to work for an hour, just to put it all away, clean all the dust out, put the cars back every single time they want to do it. A 10-minute drive down the road, a 10-minute drive back home, whatever it may be, is going to be a lot less effort than setting up that workshop every single time. So that's yet another demographic that we're looking at here. We know that there are folks in this club who have their own workshop and would never really want to use this. But for them, this gives a dedicated meeting space. So even though they may not be interested in utilizing this facility, they would be able to come to meetings and have more than a PowerPoint presentation. They would have these hands-on, these live demonstrations for every single meeting. So this would give to all the different demographics that we're looking at of the club. Whether they want to use the facility, whether they don't, if they do, the reasons why they want to do that. I think this covers and is a benefit to everybody. Is there any other questions here? I know I kind of kept talking.
Well, I think if you have a lot of high-end equipment, like I have a full workshop, but if I wanted to do CNC, I have to go to Bob or somebody else, or I don't have a lacquer spray booth, so I have to find somebody else to do that. So even though I can build anything, there are a few things that I could use at another place if it were available.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. There's things that I will never procure just because of cost.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to use those, I just don't. I have to find a way around it at this point. So that is a great point. I think is there another one?
Just questions.
Did the Champagne place have a fairly decent finish room, spray area?
So,
I know for me, kind of like Roland, that's probably an area where I'm not set up really to do that, and that's something I know I would potentially use.
So I was very surprised at that. They had this facility with all this stuff in all this room, and their finish area was, saw that picture with the sanding area. You walk through to get to the back, and on the other side was a lathe, and then there was a false wall made up of cabinets, and then the finish area was on the other side. And they said it was never, sanding dust was never an issue because there was a big door there they would crack open and have a breeze that went the other way, and they could finish and not have. I'm with you. You'd have to have some sort of closed off. Yeah.
That's a good point.
I was surprised at how they did their finishing there. They said it works for them, and if it works for you, it works for you. But I agree,
And something else to also consider, not want to throw water on the fire here, but dealing with OSHA, EPA, someone gets hurt, do we have to report it as an EPA incident?
I don't know.
Things like that,
And those are all things that can be found out in the next stage.
Right.
So.
Yeah,
Mine's even more basic though. You talk about cleaning up the dust and that. No, my project, when the garage starts, it stays that way. It looks like hell for months at a time. And,
You're bragging if it's
I
just
don't
months.
know, I don't know what, it's months.
You know, this shop has a potential of saving a few marriages then.
My wife's gotten used to it, 40 years next week. Anyway,
Saving marriages with us being out of the house.
When your shop shares the same HVAC, it's kind of tough.
I would worry about just my confidence in, my fellow man, and more people like me than there are like you, you know, that are out there making messes and stuff, you know. But,
I'm sorry.
So your objective really tonight is to determine a vote for forming a committee.
Correct, yes. Then, so other questions, real quick, go ahead.
My question, I didn't really have a question. My comment is that I've heard an awful lot of positive things from this room tonight, and my personal feeling is that we need to vote yes or no, and I hope to God everybody in here wants to vote yes.
So, sounds like we're towards the comment side, so yeah, that is what tonight is for, is to vote on the next step. It's, the next step is to form a committee, get all of this on paper, get it all together, so when we come back in September, we can pass out revised bylaws to everybody to read, so they can be voted on the meeting after that. Unfortunately, this is a long process, especially with bylaw changes, because this isn't just an amendment, something to write onto the amendment page of bylaws. This is a complete revision. So we want to try to get everything together, so in September when we meet back, we can email that out ahead of time, so, but at the same time, hand out a copy so everybody has a chance to read it, and we can come back and vote on that in October, which would then officially start the shop process if everybody says they're good at that point.
I'll move that.
So,
One of the things people will run into if somebody has a planer, or there's a planer in the shop, and you come in and you wanna use it, and all of a sudden, there's a line going through because somebody ran something with a nail in it, then, you know, your time is lost.
Helical then.
Huh?
We have a helical planer then.
Well, and that was one of the things that the Champagne system, which is kind of top of the line. You look and see who used that planer before, and then go back and they have to, I don't wanna say they have to fix it, but they're held accountable for.
Yeah, some people might not know.
Right,
You
exactly.
know, they're running.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think we could afford to do that all, you know what I mean, but yeah.
They're fortunate, the system that they have using these key cards, the person who started that company is a member of the club. So, they've got a lot of, partnerships going on. Sure.
That's not expensive technology, I mean.
It's not expensive, no, and I've developed RFID stuff at home, just playing around. You put it on the dog's tag and open something up. But, when you commercialize it like that, you know, he's asking $300 for each car. It becomes, you know, but you're right, it's not an expensive technology to put together for us.
Dustin, didn't you say, or didn't the old boy up there at Champagne, they tripped off, the table saw?
Oh,
Two times.
They've had two saw stop trips, and one of them was metal miter gauge they touched, and the other one was a skin contact. But when you have 20 plus people using that equipment, and they've been open for, at that point, what was it, 8, 9 months, things are gonna happen, which that saw stop technology, it's
spectacular. Would it be advantageous if we had a meeting at the reclaim shop or something sometime and have a look at facility, or do you have that in mind at some point?
That's something that we could discuss. That's the only thing we'd have to do is find out seating. And then also, like I said, we have to talk about that later offline as well. So, any more comments before a vote?
I don't, this can wait probably, but,
Okay.
right now we are a club. We're not a nonprofit. If we move to a nonprofit, possibly in the future, we'd be a guild, maybe.
Well, I think you should move to the nonprofit as quickly as possible, because that's a source for people who want to donate, will donate because they have some interest in that. And so, that's a way to get money in quickly.
I agree.
And tools.
So if someone had a piece of equipment that they wanted to make available to this, they could do a donation and we would be a 403C and they could get a tax credit for that? Sure.
Yes, correct.
Even if it's a used piece of equipment, they can say, this is the value that I place on it, and,
Yep. It would be the same as taking some to Goodwill and they hand you that card filled out with a, and it'd be the same as that. So, that's a, yeah, you both bring up a great point when it comes to that, having that 501c3 to be able to take those donations. Because as a 501c7, that would not be enough. So,
How many people are you thinking you're gonna need for the committee?
I don't know how many people we need, because I honestly don't know how many people would be willing to do so. And we only have so many active members anyway. So it's basically if you have the time and you want to help out. So so let me first go through the comments on doing this next step. If there is there.
John Little would like to be on the committee.
Yeah, he texted me before we even got here today. Yeah. So let's go ahead. If there's no other comments on moving to this next step, let's go ahead and have a vote. The vote is to put a committee together to move on to the next step of getting all the facts together, getting a business plan together, bylaws written, and now we could present to the club at the next meeting to see if we want to move forward with this venture. That would be my motion, and we have to have a second.
For the motion first, should we also add the becoming a 501c3?
Yeah, that's
that.
pretty much everything that was in this PowerPoint is what we're voting on, is to put those things together. Like I said, we are not moving forward with actually doing this at this point. It's just more, we want to make sure we're not wasting our time spinning our wheels, and we'll make sure there's interest in this. So, is there a second for a motion?
I second.
Bob Stein seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, opposed? Good to go. All right, and then if you're interested in being a part of the committee, one of the things is between now and September is not a whole lot of time. So we'll need to meet frequently between now and then to basically give out assignment. April, figure this stuff out, who's going to figure what out, and then come back and compile this information. If you are interested, just send me an email or call me or text me, and I will tonight send out an email about what we talked about here to everybody, every member as well, so you can just reply to that. So.
I think if somebody in the room has expertise in doing bylaws or doing safety, insurance, we would really want you to step up and volunteer. That would make it a lot easier as we go through this. So if you have the expertise in yourself, fine, please do. Please volunteer, that'd make it a lot easier.
Just to make sure nothing there. So any other questions on this? I kind of almost beat a dead horse on this, kind of walking through it, but I just wanted to make sure everything was out there because this isn't a rather big deal. So, no other questions. We do have a presentation tonight. Jim, you brought lots to show us. So,
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Lights? Let's turn lights on or not, I can't even tell.
Yeah, they're all right.
Alright, good. Like I said earlier, I'm gonna be married 40 years here this next week. And as of 5 years ago, we never had a headboard on our bed. And all this woodworking I've been doing, I promised my wife I'd build her a bedroom outfit. So I built her a king-size headboard, footboard, side rails, 2 nightstands, a dresser, and a chest of drawers. I brought this is my before picture. That's from Ralph's wood lumber yard there. I think I had 30 boards there, and they've been through the planer a few times. But I think there was almost 900 board feet in the project. I had to build 2 of these. I had 4 nightstands, 2 chest drawers, because my workshop there was in my house that I downsized from when I sold it to my son. And part of the deal was I got dibs on the workshop, but I needed to cement my relationship with my daughter-in-law. So I built her king-size footboard and headboard and nightstand. Anyway, go ahead and move it on to something else. Those are just pictures of the boards. I had to go and stack these things up like this, and I'm running through a 13-inch DeWalt portable planer. And I run the board through there and catch it, and I have to go all the way through this whole stack. I think there's 36 boards there, because the dark spots in between are the boards that are offset. Anyway, I had to run through all of those because I need to make sure that all of my stock was the same thickness when I worked on this, and then just keep on going there. These are, I don't have a lot of pictures of the headboard and the footboard. These are the tops for the nightstands and the chest of drawers, and you can see my workshop is now a 2-car garage that's on the other side of the 1-car garage. And anyway, I went and first you get all the boards together, and then you have to glue them up into blanks. And what I brought here was some of my weapons of mass destruction here. I built these over 20 years ago. This is for doing panels. It's got a channel on it here to fit on my table saw, and you want to go and make sure that you can go and slide the whole panel all at once. So I always end up waxing this thing here before I put it on my table saw, and it moves the whole panel straight through the table saw, nice and easy. This one here, another one that I built. This is a dado panel. We had this thing pops out, it removes. I can remove that. I made these handles myself too. But this has a channel in it for the dado blade that for 3/4 inch dado will come through here. And I also have another one that I switch out that is just for the regular saw blade. But again, that has the strip there that runs right down through the on my table saw to keep things going nice and straight, 90 degrees to the blade. This right here, we got an idea what this is. This is one of my inventions. Okay, whenever I had to have cut a tenon on a longer board, like the side rail on the bed, it's 72 inches long. Well, trying to move that on the panel thing and keeping the board level with the table saw and everything, I go and set up a couple of jack stands with the rollers on them, one on each side, and I go and figure out this will probably handle up to maybe a 18-inch board. But I go and set this on the jack stand so that the board can rest on this after it's dangling off the end of the table saw. This will roll along back and forth on top of the jack stands. I learned a lot of these things watching this old house back in the 80s. There was I went to a home show, and Norm Abrams was there. And I got to shake hands with him, and I told him, I said, when me and my friends play in this old house, I get to be Norm Abrams. Anyway, he got to and then, what are we looking at there? Oh, those are the panels for the top of the dresser. And This right here, this is another one of my homemade jigs. I made this. This is for your our router, and I fasten all these things to my table saw. And this thing here, I would put the leg of the nightstand, for example, in there, and then I go and adjust the measure the mortise how big I want it to be, and then I lay it out here, and I have little stops here that I don't know if you can see them or not. Little stops that slide in and out, up and down here. But anyway, I would go and line those up with my leg and be able to use a plunge router with a spiral bit in it. And you go and you always had to go and run each mortise twice. Go one way, and then you had to turn it around and do it the other because you want it to be in the center of the board. So you'd go and cut your mortise first, and you get it that way it'd be completely centered, and then you go and make your tenon afterwards, make it fit the mortise. Okay, so and this thing here, this is a homemade feather board that I made, and I don't remember how I figured out how to do this, but I split this piece of wood right here, so that when you tighten this, that spreads apart, and that grabs the side of the channel on my table saw, and this will keep the board up against that table saw so that you don't go and cut your fingers off on the blades. All right, flip to another picture there, see what else we got. Okay, this is an example of my mortise work here. These were all the legs for the tables, or legs for the headboard and the footboard. You'll notice they all have pencil marks here. You see the pencil mark pointing, that's to the outside of this board, because what I did was I set those on top of my table saw, and they were all identical in height. I used them as my to set the router on, keep it from wobbling. But I put the arrows on there so that I knew where the outside was of this table leg, and then I had to turn the thing around. I did all of the outsides, and I turned them around and do the other side so I'd have the mortises right down the middle. Okay, as far as there you go, another picture then, keep on going. Okay, there's the carcasses after I went and this is probably gluing them up. Make sure that you always go and put the thing together dry first. You don't ever want to go and do something, try gluing it on the first try without putting it together. These, we'll stop right there on that one, because all of my whole project was really wrapped up into this, into the way that I built this table here. These are a lot smaller. These legs are, the legs there on these are bigger. They're probably 3 by 3. But anyway, this thing here, I made these panels on the sides. These are panels, and then they're also connected to the side rails here. And the rails are mortise and tenon for this leg and this leg here. So what I did was I went and built each end, the panels are fastened to the legs here, and then on the back side, I made the rails that went across the top. This is what actually holds the whole thing together then. And these things here are, this is just fastened. This just has a rabbet in there, and it's a piece of 1/2-inch plywood that I went and used biscuit just to put those in the side there, just keep them lined up. These are all mortised and tenoned in here. All of the edges on all the legs are chamfered and 45 degrees. And sure that this inside panel here is flush with the legs. That way you can go and fasten these side rails here, and they fit nice and flush, and they come all the way out past the front of it. And the cabinet drawers close to here. Anyway, this is just a 1x6. Right across here, they're fastened with to the panel with biscuits. That's how I hooked all this up. Then, okay, glue it up, flip it. This thing here is the middle part. On there is just a piece of plywood. That's 3/4 inch plywood, but I cut it about a half an inch short of the front of the cabinet, and I just took another piece of oak, and I, for lack of a better word, like laminated, just a little glue, a couple nails down the front of it, and that bottom piece of the floor of the cabinet, that's a sheet of 3/4 inch plywood that I went and cut a dado in down the middle. Right there. Put the dado down the middle so that would stand vertically straight up and down. And tried to get all the drawers. I made 4 nightstands, all those chest drawers. I had to make 30 drawers to do this whole project. Where's that last drawer go? Right here. All the drawers that I've done in the past, I always like to do dovetail joinery, okay, because I think it looks so much nicer. But facing the Herculean task of doing 30 of these things, I took the cowards way out. Didn't make a butt joint, but this is a dovetail right here. I took a dovetail jig and I ran the thing straight on in, and then I went and took each one of these pieces. These are all poplar, but I went and did the same thing in here through the front. You see it? Now, see that? It's a. I'm sorry.
You don't scratch the top.
Yeah.
Yep, you're right.
It's a metal rail.
What the hell? History of the piece, right? Anyway, that. So we got the dovetail, and we slid this thing through there, and then I cheated. Put a little shot of glue, shot a nail through there. It's a cuss word to many people, but it held the thing together. So, go ahead, next slide. Tell you where I'm at on the project. This is when I'm making, I believe, the drawer sides is what that was, right there. Go ahead. I have no idea. Keep going. There you go. That's after they've been glued and put together. Running short on space. Keep going. There's the, this thing here is kind of neat. When I put, this is the front of one of the drawers. You can see where I've gone and made the rabbet joint right here that's going there. Well, I needed to know how, and these were all the same on the distance on the side, but the top of the drawers, some of the drawers are taller and stuff than the others. So I had this jigs, I guess. It's the same height as the drawers, the drawer front, and the top end of it. I think the next slide shows it better. No, it doesn't show it better. Okay, there it is, right there. You can see across the top, I've got a spacer there. That goes in, pushes the drawer farther this way so that the router hits that top of that 90 degree, and that's what makes my stop. Anyway, I had to do 30 of those things. I was telling Roland earlier that I have to think about this stuff for a long time before I ever get started. And this thing here, I thought long and hard on how to figure this out. Go ahead. That is a finished front of a chest of drawers. I don't know how I got half a screen there, but that's my daughter-in-law's outfit. It's got the ugly handles and the dark stain on it that I didn't want, but she wanted. I gave her what she wanted. There's way I had my chamfering set up there, 90 degrees or 45 degrees for the, that's one of the legs there coming off. I could just, you can see I kept the guide here, and you can bet that this thing here is on the other end of that leg down here on top, 2 jack stands, unless it, that looks like a pretty big one. That's probably the bottom leg of the headboard. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can kind of see it in the top left-hand corner there.
Yeah, you can see it right there, right up here. Thank you. Okay, that is the footboard laying sideways, and after it's all been finished, actually these, you'll go ahead to the next panel. That's my router jig all fastened up. Go ahead. This is my way of holding things up to this fence. I really take my piece of wire fence and just take a board and stretch it and shove it up there so that this board won't move on the outside of my table saw. Keep going. There's my setup there. Yeah. There you go. That's my little keep the boards rolling straight system there. And go ahead. That's the headboard there, that other one. That one there, that's the headboard. All of these panels, I was hoping there was a picture, there's one in here somewhere. There's a picture that shows all of the panels are stained, but the headboard is not, okay? I went and built all of these, I cut all of these panels and then I stained them all before I went and glued everything up. And the reason is because if you try to stain those inside the panels, it's harder to help to get that stain out of those corners in there, you know. And if you go and put the panels in there, they're all floating. None of them are glued in. They all move. So that's what I did. And that's the center beam that goes right down the middle of the bed to connect the footboard to the headboard and hold the slats that go straight across it. Go ahead. That's a picture of my jig before I started doing drawer fronts. Go ahead. See, that's my router guide in action that we were showing there. There you go. Go ahead. Same old, same old. That's a drawer front. No, that's a drawer side. I got a rabbit in there to put the bottom of the drawer in. Go ahead. Boring router shots. Anybody have a question in there or anything? There you go. This is what you do when you have the size of shop I do. You start stacking things on top of each other. There you go. I think I'm almost done. But,
Now you're about half done.
I'm only half done. My goodness. There you go. That's this is stacked on top of each other. You can see those are that top one's my wife's, the bottom one's my daughter. Right there. And the one on the left is my.
May I ask when this project started? How much time?
How much time did I spend on it? Well, I know that I spent almost a week running the boards from Ralph's house before I could use them. Going through that, I went through 47 55-gallon bags of shavings from my planer when I was making this. How long did it take me? It probably took me a month. I probably worked on it for nonstop for a month. Yeah, good. And this would be 8 to 10 hours a day for 6 days a week, something like that. I think Norm asked me once how much, if you wanted to make $10 an hour, how much would you have to charge to make $10 an hour on this? And I told him $26,000. Anyway, it was quite the project. When one of the things to a novice woodworker, I would say, is the first thing you got to do is you got to make sure that all your legs, you go and get them all glued up and cut to the correct dimensions, but you leave them square, and then you do your mortises into the legs before you do any chamfering or anything else, because you'll end up going and tearing the hell out of something. I went and actually put I don't remember what it was. It's been 5 years since I built this thing, but I ended up having to replace one of these corners on a leg on the chest of drawers, and I was able to run it through the table saw, cut a 90-degree here and a 90-degree there, and then cut just a piece, a corner piece, and glue it in there, glue it in the full length of the piece, and then I set it on my planer, and I ran it through the planer until it just got right down to that surface there, and you couldn't even tell that it had been repaired, which kind of reminds me of the definition between an amateur and a professional. The professional knows how to hide his mistakes, and that's what I did. Okay, next. This is more of the same. That's getting ready to be, I don't know what I was going to do there, but that's definitely, I think that this is one of the sides of the cabinet here, and then I have that set up to getting ready to put my dovetail corner on the inside of this so that it'll fit down into the slot. Next. Gluing up. You can see the back in the background there. There's the panels that are inside the frame before I have anything sanded and before the framework is all done. There it is. I was looking for that one earlier. See how all the panels are all stained before I went. And but this is all glued up. It's ready for finish now. It's God only knows. Let's see. Okay, that's how I fastened the jig down to everything's fastened on my table saw. That cotton picking table saw gets more uses out of it. I'm raising and lowering that blade, using it for a workbench all the time. Okay. That's it. More just getting ready to do the drawer fronts. There's a finished one.
And
finally there?
Yes.
That's all I have. Any questions? Well, you've been very nice. Thank you.